Story number 1. Whispers of Jesse Lee Home. December 2012. The biting cold of an Alaskan winter had settled over Seward, transforming the landscape into a vast expanse of white. The days were short, and the nights stretched endlessly, wrapped in darkness broken only by the pale glow of the moon and the occasional flicker of the northern lights. My name is Emily Carter, a freelance journalist with a penchant for uncovering forgotten stories. When I heard about the Jesse Lee Home, a defunct orphanage turned hospital in Seward, my curiosity was piqued. The local legends were rife with tales of unexplained deaths and eerie occurrences, making it the perfect subject for my next article. Jesse Lee Home had once been a beacon of hope for orphan children, a place where they were cared for and nurtured. However, decades of neglect and a series of mysterious deaths had tarnished its reputation. The building had been abandoned since the late 1980s, left to succumb to the relentless Alaskan elements. Yet, despite its desolate state, the whispers of its haunted past persisted, drawing in those brave or foolish enough to seek its secrets. I arrived in Seward on a crisp December morning, the town barely awake under a blanket of snow. The locals were tight-lipped about the Jesse Lee Home, their eyes darting away when I mentioned it. Undeterred, I rented a small cabin on the outskirts, close enough to the old building to allow for easy access. My plan was to spend a few nights documenting my experiences, capturing any signs of the supernatural that locals swore by. The first day was spent exploring the exterior of the Jesse Lee Home. The once grand structure stood stoic against the harsh winter, its windows shattered, doors hanging ajar as if inviting intruders. Vines and snow clung to its walls, nature reclaiming what once belonged to humanity. I took photographs, noting the intricate architecture that hinted at a bygone era of care and compassion now lost to time. As dusk approached, I set up my equipment inside my cabin, preparing for the night ahead. I reviewed the stories I had gathered, children's laughter echoing through the halls, ghostly footsteps in the dead of night, and shadowy figures glimpsed through broken windows. Most chilling of all were the photographs taken by past explorers, showing ethereal images of children staring blankly into the lens from abandoned rooms. That night, the temperature plummeted, the wind howling outside as I settled into my sleeping bag. The cabin was small and sparsely furnished, the only light coming from a single lamp and the flickering screen of my laptop. I decided to start my investigation early the next morning, but sleep eluded me. Instead, I found myself wide awake, listening to the silence that enveloped the town. Around midnight, I heard it, the faint sound of footsteps echoing through the hallway outside my cabin. My heart raced as I strained to listen, the sound growing louder, more deliberate. It was as if someone was pacing back and forth, their footsteps slow and heavy against the wooden floor. I grabbed my flashlight and crept towards the door, peering out into the darkness. There was nothing there, only the swirling snow and the eerie stillness of the night. I exhaled slowly, convincing myself it was just the wind playing tricks on me. But as I turned to return to my sleeping bag, I saw a faint glow emanating from the direction of the Jesse Lee Home. My blood ran cold. The light flickered intermittently, casting long shadows that danced across the snow. Compelled by a mix of fear and curiosity, I decided to investigate. I grabbed my coat and made my way through the snow, the light guiding me like a beacon in the night. The journey was treacherous, the snow deep and the cold biting, but the pull of the unknown drove me forward. As I approached the old building, the air grew colder, and an oppressive silence settled over the area. The light was coming from one of the upper windows, a room that had been the heart of the Jesse Lee Home. I stood at the base of the staircase, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness as I ascended the steps. Each step creaked under my weight, the sound unnervingly loud in the stillness. When I reached the top, I saw her, a young girl, no older than 8, standing by the window. She was dressed in a tattered dress, her hair disheveled, and her eyes hollow and empty. "Hello," I called out softly, my voice barely more than a whisper. She turned slowly to face me, her expression devoid of emotion. "Don't forget us," she murmured, her voice echoing through the empty room. I felt a chill run down my spine as I took a step closer. "Who are you?" She didn't answer. Instead, she pointed towards the window, and I followed her gaze. Outside, the snow swirled in unnatural patterns, forming shapes that resembled the footprints of children. Each set of prints led away from the building, deep into the forest, but there was no indication of where they ended. Before I could react, the room grew icy cold, my breath visible in the frigid air. The atmosphere became thick with a palpable sadness, as if the walls themselves were mourning the lost souls. I felt an overwhelming sense of sorrow and despair, the weight of the children's suffering pressing down on me. Suddenly, the door slammed shut, plunging me into darkness. My flashlight flickered and died, leaving me in pitch blackness. Panic set in as I fumbled for my phone. But there was no signal, no way to call for help. I was trapped, alone with the lingering spirits of Jessie Lee Home. The girl began to fade, her form becoming more translucent until she was nothing more than a whisper in the air. The room seemed to breathe, the walls pulsing with a silent rhythm. Then, a chorus of voices filled the space, the sound of children laughing and crying intertwined in a haunting melody. I could feel their presence all around me, their eyes watching, their whispers echoing in my mind. "Remember us," they seemed to say. "Don't forget." Desperate to escape, I stumbled towards the door, but it wouldn't budge. The voices grew louder, more insistent, drowning out any rational thought. I collapsed to the floor, tears streaming down my face as the weight of their sorrow overwhelmed me. In that moment, I understood. The Jessie Lee Home was more than just a building. It was a vessel of grief and loss, holding the spirits of children who had never found peace. Their untimely deaths and the absence of closure had bound them to the place, their existence a testament to the pain they endured, summoning every ounce of strength. I whispered back to them, "I won't forget. I'll tell your story." The room began to lighten, the oppressive energy lifting as a sense of calm washed over me. The voices softened, their presence becoming less intense. The door finally gave way, swinging open to reveal the first light of dawn breaking through the snow-covered landscape. I stood up, my body trembling but my resolve firm. The experience had changed me, deepening my understanding of the thin veil between life and death, between the living and the lost. As I made my way back to my cabin, the sun rising in the east, I felt a sense of purpose, a mission to honor the memories of those who had been forgotten. The following weeks were a blur of research and interviews, each piece of information adding depth to the haunting tale of Jessie Lee Home. I spoke with former staff members, local historians, and families who had lost children within the park's boundaries. Each story echoed the same themes of unexplained disappearances, sorrow, and lingering spirits seeking recognition and remembrance. Determined to shed light on the tragedy, I began writing my article, detailing the history of the Jessie Lee Home and the supernatural occurrences that plagued its halls. I included my own first-hand experience, the encounter that had opened my eyes to the profound sadness embedded within the building's walls. As I delved deeper, I uncovered records of the children who had been lost, their names and stories etched into my memory as I vowed to give them a voice. But the more I uncovered, the more I realized that the spirits of Jessie Lee Home were not content to remain forgotten. Late at night, I would hear faint footsteps echoing through my cabin, the soft giggles of children playing in the shadows, and the occasional whisper of their pleas for remembrance. The line between my investigation and their restless presence began to blur, each day intertwining my life with their eternal longing. One particularly cold evening, as I sat poring over old newspaper clippings, the power went out, plunging my cabin into darkness. The only light came from the fireplace, casting long, dancing shadows across the room. I heard it then, a soft knocking at the door, followed by the unmistakable sound of a child's laughter. My heart raced as I approached the window, hoping to catch a glimpse of the spirits. But the snow-covered landscape remained undisturbed. I realized then that the story was far from over. The voices of the lost children called out to me, urging me to continue their legacy, to ensure that their stories were never forgotten. I knew that my journey was only beginning, that the spirits of Jesse Lee Home had more to share, more to reveal about their tragic past. Months later, the article was published, receiving widespread attention and sparking renewed interest in the mysteries of the Alaska wilderness. I continued my work, documenting other haunted sites and forgotten tragedies, each story a thread in the intricate tapestry of human suffering and supernatural intervention. Yet, no matter how many stories I uncovered, the memories of Jesse Lee Home lingered the most. The faces of those children, their empty eyes, and their desperate pleas for remembrance were etched into my soul, a constant reminder of the thin line between life and death, and the enduring power of memory. As the years passed, I became known not just as a journalist but as a storyteller for the lost and forgotten. The Jesse Lee Home remained a focal point of my work, its legacy intertwined with my own. Each December, as the snow fell heavily and the nights grew long, I found myself returning to Seward, standing once more before the haunted structure that had changed my life. The locals welcomed me with a mix of fear and respect, their eyes reflecting the same sorrow I carried within. One winter night, I decided to pay my respects to the spirits of Jesse Lee Home. Armed with candles, photographs of the lost children, and a heart full of empathy, I walked through the snow-covered grounds, my footsteps soft against the frozen earth. The moon cast a silvery glow over the landscape, the stars twinkling like distant eyes watching over us. I entered the old building, the door creaking ominously as I pushed it open. The interior was cold, the air thick with the scent of damp wood and long-buried sorrow. I made my way to the center of the main hall, where I had first encountered the ghostly girl. Placing the candles around the room, I began to speak softly, recounting the stories of the children who had been lost and the hope that their memories would live on. As I spoke, the temperature dropped, and the shadows lengthened, wrapping around me like a comforting yet haunting embrace. The air seemed to shimmer with a presence, the spirits of Jesse Lee Home surrounding me in a silent vigil. I felt their sorrow, their longing for recognition and closure, and I vowed to continue sharing their stories, ensuring that their voices were never forgotten. Suddenly, the room was filled with soft whispers, the gentle voices of children playing and laughing, their sounds blending into a harmonious symphony of joy and innocence. The candles flickered, casting dancing shadows that mirrored the light in their eyes. I felt a sense of peace wash over me, the weight of their suffering lifting as their stories were finally heard. As I left the Jesse Lee Home that night, the first light of dawn breaking through the darkness, I knew that my connection to the spirits of the past was unbreakable. They had given me a purpose, a mission to honor their memories and ensure that their tragic stories were never lost to time. Years later, the Jesse Lee Home still stands, a silent sentinel in the Alaskan wilderness, its haunted halls echoing with the whispers of lost souls. My experiences there remain the most profound of my career, a testament to the enduring power of memory and the thin veil that separates the living from the dead. And as I sit by my fireplace each winter, the memories of Jesse Lee Home and its lost children fill my mind. Their stories a haunting reminder of the past and a beacon guiding my future endeavors. The whispers of Seward, carried on the cold Alaskan wind, continue to call out, urging me to remember, to honor, and to never forget the shadows that linger in the halls of Jesse Lee Home. For in the end, some places are more than just buildings. They are repositories of human emotion, holding within their walls the echoes of lives lived and lost. The Jesse Lee Home is a stark reminder that even in the most desolate and forgotten places, the spirit of humanity endures, seeking recognition, closure, and ultimately, peace. Story number 2. Vanished in the Shadows of Denali, December 1999. The crisp Alaskan air bit into my lungs as I gazed out over the sprawling expanse of Denali National Park. My name is David Harper, and I had always been drawn to the wild, untouched beauty of Alaska when my friend, Mark, suggested a winter camping trip deep into the heart of Denali. I didn't hesitate. The promise of solitude, the thrill of adventure, and the allure of pristine wilderness were irresistible. Mark was an experienced hiker, someone who knew every trail and hidden nook of the park. Our group consisted of 4 friends: Mark, myself, Lisa, and Tom. We were all eager to escape the hustle and bustle of everyday life, seeking peace and camaraderie in the serene embrace of nature. Little did we know, Denali held secrets darker than the longest winter nights. We set up camp near the base of a towering pine, the snow crunching under our boots as we unloaded our gear. The sky was a brilliant shade of twilight blue, stars beginning to twinkle above as the sun dipped below the horizon. The first night was calm, filled with laughter, stories, and the comforting crackle of the campfire. Mark shared tales of his previous expeditions, his voice steady and reassuring. As the days passed, the weather remained harsh but predictable. The biting cold and relentless snowstorms tested our endurance. But the group remained spirited. We spent our days hiking, photographing the majestic landscape, and reveling in the untouched beauty that surrounded us. Yet, beneath the surface of our camaraderie, an undercurrent of unease began to take hold. On the 5th day, we decided to venture further into the wilderness, seeking a secluded spot rumored to offer unparalleled views of Denali itself. The trail was steep and treacherous, the path barely visible under layers of snow. Mark led the way, his confidence unwavering despite the challenging conditions. By late afternoon, we reached a clearing that offered a breathtaking panorama of the mountain. We set up our tents, the area serene and seemingly untouched. As night fell, the temperature plummeted, and the howling wind outside the tent provided a haunting backdrop to our evening. It was during the late hours that the first signs of trouble emerged. I was jolted awake by a loud, ripping sound, like fabric tearing with incredible force. My heart raced as I reached out to wake the others, but the tent was empty. Panic surged through me as I scanned the darkness, only to realize that Mark was missing. "Mark!" I called out, my voice trembling. "Where are you?" No response. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside, the biting cold searing my skin. The snow-covered ground was undisturbed, save for a series of large footprints leading away from our tent and into the dense forest. They were unlike any animal tracks I had seen, massive, with deep claw marks that suggested something far more sinister. I hurried back inside, waking Lisa and Tom with frantic urgency. We exchanged worried glances, our fear mounting as we debated our next move. Mark was an experienced outdoorsman. His sudden disappearance was uncharacteristic and alarming. "We need to search for him," Lisa insisted, her voice shaky but determined. "He could be injured or lost." Tom nodded, though his eyes betrayed his fear. "Let's stick together. We can cover more ground that way." We bundled up, armed with our flashlights and supplies, and set off into the night, following the trail of footprints that seemed to vanish into the heart of the forest. The moon was hidden behind thick clouds, leaving us in near-total darkness. The only sounds were our own footsteps crunching on the snow and the distant howl of the wind, a haunting symphony that heightened our anxiety. Hours passed without any sign of Mark. The footprints had led us deeper into the wilderness, away from the relative safety of our camp. My mind raced with worst-case scenarios: wild animals, sudden storms, even something more inexplicable. Denali had always been a place of awe and wonder, but now it felt like a labyrinth designed to trap us in its icy embrace. As dawn approached, we decided to head back, the trail becoming increasingly indistinct. Exhausted and disheartened, we trudged through the snow, our hope dwindling with each passing hour. Just as the first light of morning began to break through the darkness, we stumbled upon a sight that sent chills down my spine. There, Half buried in the snow was Mark's tent, torn apart as if by something with immense strength. The fabric was shredded, and the poles were snapped like toothpicks. More disturbingly, the footprints had stopped abruptly, leaving us with no clue as to where Mark had gone. My stomach churned as I realized that something far more sinister was at play. We searched the area frantically, calling out Mark's name, but there was no response. The forest seemed to mock our desperation, the trees looming like silent sentinels guarding their dark secrets. The weight of our situation pressed heavily upon us, the realization sinking in that we were alone, cut off from any help. Days turned into weeks as we attempted to piece together what had happened. We organized search parties, scoured the surrounding areas, and consulted with local authorities. But the mystery of Mark's disappearance remained unsolved. The only clue we had was the torn tent and the inexplicable footprints that led us into the heart of Denali's darkest woods. Months passed, and the memories of that winter expedition became a haunting reminder of the unforgiving wilderness. We left Denali with more questions than answers, the disappearance of our friend lingering in our minds like a specter. The local community whispered about the legends of Denali, stories of spirits and creatures that roamed the forests, preying on those who dared to venture too far. Years later, I still find myself haunted by the events of that winter. Late at night, when the wind howls through the trees and the snow blankets the world in silence, I can almost hear Mark's voice calling out for help. The footprints that led us into the wilderness remain etched in my memory, a chilling reminder that some mysteries are better left unsolved. Denali National Park remains a place of beauty and terror, its vast wilderness holding secrets that defy explanation. The legend of Mark's disappearance has become part of the local folklore, a cautionary tale for those who seek adventure in the untamed wilds. And as I reflect on that fateful winter, I can't help but wonder, what truly lies beneath the surface of Denali's pristine beauty? What forces dwell in the shadows, waiting to claim the unwary? In the end, the truth about Mark's disappearance remains a chilling enigma, a puzzle that may never be fully understood. Denali stands as a testament to the power and mystery of nature, a place where the line between reality and the supernatural blurs, and where the whispers of the lost echo through the endless expanse of snow and ice. And so, as I share this story, I urge those who hear it to heed the warnings of the past, respect the wilderness, honor the legends, and never underestimate the untamed forces that reside in the heart of Alaska. For in the shadows of Denali, the truth lies hidden, waiting for those brave enough to seek it, and those foolish enough to become part of its eternal mystery. Story number 3. Whispers Beneath the Iliamna Lake. December 2015. The biting cold of an Alaskan winter had settled over the vast expanse of Iliamna Lake, the largest in the state. As a seasoned fisherman, I had spent countless hours navigating its icy waters, but nothing could have prepared me for the night that would forever change my perception of the lake and of reality itself. My name is Tom Reynolds, and fishing was more than a hobby. It was a way of life. Growing up in the small town of Iliamna, I had inherited my father's love for the lake. Every summer, thousands of tourists flocked to our town, eager to experience the pristine beauty and the abundant fishing opportunities Iliamna offered. But amidst the tales of hearty catches and serene sunsets, there were darker stories whispered among the locals. Stories of strange lights beneath the water and unexplained noises that echoed through the night. I had always dismissed these as mere legends, remnants of an era when the wilderness held more mysteries than answers. That was until the night I encountered the unknown. It was a particularly harsh winter, with temperatures plummeting well below freezing and snowdrifts piling high along the shoreline. The ice on Iliamna had thickened, making it a challenging but rewarding hunt for the elusive northern pike. I set out early, my boat cutting through the frozen surface, the only sounds the crunch of snow under my boots and the occasional crack of shifting ice. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I anchored my boat near a secluded cove. The area was known for its deep waters, a perfect spot for pike to hide during the colder months. I set up my gear, baited my hooks, and settled into a rhythm, the serenity of the lake enveloping me. Hours passed without a single bite, the cold numbing my fingers and the darkness growing thicker. Just as I was contemplating calling it a night, a flicker of light beneath the ice caught my eye. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, perhaps a reflection from my lantern or the residual glow from the setting sun. But the light persisted, moving in a slow, deliberate pattern that seemed almost intelligent. I stood up, squinting into the darkness, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The light pulsed rhythmically, as if signaling something. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of fear and fascination pulling me closer to the edge of the ice. Suddenly, a loud explosion-like sound reverberated through the stillness, causing me to jump back. The ice beneath me trembled, and the water below surged with unseen energy. I grabbed my flashlight, its beam piercing the darkness, and scanned the area. The light was gone, replaced by an eerie, unnatural silence. Before I could process what had happened, another flash of light appeared, brighter this time, emanating from deeper within the lake. Compelled by a force I couldn't explain, I leaned over the side, peering into the inky depths. The water was impossibly clear, revealing a hidden world beneath the surface. Shapes moved swiftly, too large and swift to be any known aquatic creature. Then, I saw it, a massive, shadowy figure, its form obscured by darkness yet unmistakably colossal. It moved with a fluid grace, its presence commanding and terrifying. The ground seemed to tremble with each movement, and the air grew thick with an oppressive energy. I stumbled backward, my mind racing to understand what I was witnessing. A voice, deep and resonant, echoed in my mind, more felt than heard. "Do not trespass." The message was clear, the warning unmistakable. I backed away, my instincts screaming at me to leave, but the grip of fear held me in place. The figure paused, and another sound broke the silence, a low, mournful howl that seemed to come from the very depths of the earth. The lake began to churn violently, the ice cracking and splintering as if something immense was struggling beneath the surface. I could feel the vibrations through the boat, a pulsing energy that resonated with my very soul. Panic surged through me. I scrambled to start the engine, but it sputtered and died, leaving me adrift in the midst of chaos. The howling grew louder, more desperate, and the shadows beneath the ice seemed to reach out, encasing the lake in darkness. The temperature plummeted further, frost forming on every surface as the night grew colder and darker. Desperate to escape, I managed to get the engine going, the boat jerking forward with a surge of power. I accelerated, the boat slicing through the turbulent waters, the echoes of the howling fading behind me, but the sense of being watched lingered, an invisible presence following my every move. As I reached the safety of the main lake, the storms of Iliamna seemed to part before me, the path illuminated by the pale light of the moon. I didn't stop until I was back at the dock, panting and shivering from the cold and adrenaline. The lights of the town twinkled in the distance, a stark contrast to the darkness I had just escaped. That night, couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house, every whisper of the wind, reminded me of the horrors I had witnessed beneath Iliamna Lake. I shared my story with the few friends I had in town, but their reactions were mixed, some skeptical, others uneasy. The legends of the lake had always been dismissed as mere folklore, but my experience proved otherwise. Over the following weeks, more reports emerged from the fishermen who frequented the secluded coves of Iliamna. Strange lights, unexplained noises, and sightings of massive, shadowy figures became more common, painting a picture of a lake haunted by an ancient, malevolent force. The disappearances continued, each one adding to the growing fear and mystery surrounding the Alaska Triangle. I couldn't shake the feeling that what I had encountered was something beyond human understanding. A guardian, perhaps, or a remnant of a forgotten time when the wilderness held secrets no one was meant to uncover. The locals spoke of the Kushtaka, shape-shifting creatures from Tlingit folklore. But the entity I had seen was unlike any legend. It was a force of nature, primal and unforgiving, bound to the lake by a power that defied explanation. Driven by a need for answers, I returned to Iliamna Lake, armed with better equipment and a determination to uncover the truth. I spent days documenting the strange occurrences, capturing footage that would later be analyzed by experts. But the more I delved into the mystery, the more I realized the depth of the lake's secrets. One night, as I sat by the water's edge, reviewing my recordings, the same flicker of light appeared beneath the ice. My heart raced as I watched, transfixed, as the light pulsed and grew brighter, illuminating the dark waters below. The sound of distant explosions echoed once more, a stark reminder of the entity's presence. Summoning my courage, I decided to confront the unknown. I set up my camera near the edge. The lens focused on the spot where the light had emerged. As the night deepened, the air grew thick with tension, the silence oppressive. Then, the surface of the lake began to ripple, and the shadowy figure reappeared, larger and more imposing than before. This time, the message was clear: leave now, or suffer the consequences. The warnings echoed in my mind, a force compelling me to heed the call. But the lure of the unknown was too strong. I ventured closer, my every step measured and deliberate, the cold biting at my skin. The moment I reached the water's edge, the lake erupted in chaos. Waves surged violently, the ice cracking and splintering as the entity unleashed its wrath. I stumbled, my equipment scattering into the turbulent waters, the sounds of destruction overwhelming my senses. The figure loomed over me, his presence suffocating, a manifestation of the lake's darkest secrets. In a final, desperate attempt to escape, I turned and ran, the howling echoing behind me as the lake reclaimed its silence. I didn't stop until I was far from Iliamna. The horrors of the night etched into my memory. The experience left me forever changed, a reminder of the thin line between man and the mysteries that lie beneath the surface. Years have passed since that fateful night, but the legends of Iliamna Lake continue to grow, fueled by the countless disappearances and unexplained phenomena. The Alaska Triangle remains a place of fear and fascination, a realm where the natural and supernatural intertwine in a dance of shadows and whispers. And while many dismiss the stories as mere myth, I know the truth. Some secrets are buried deep, guarded by forces that should never be disturbed. As the winter winds howl through the frozen landscape, I can't help but feel a lingering connection to Iliamna Lake, a place where the unknown reigns and the whispers of the past echo through the night. The strange lights, the monstrous presence, the unexplained disappearances, all serve as a chilling testament to the power of nature and the mysteries that lie just beyond the reach of human understanding. In the end, my journey into the heart of the Alaska Triangle was more than a quest for answers. It was a confrontation with the unknown, a brush with the primal forces that shape our world. And as long as the legends persist, Iliamna Lake will remain a place where shadows dance beneath the surface, and the whispers of lost souls continue to call out to those brave enough to listen. Story number 4. The Shadows of Denali. December 2015. The Alaskan wilderness is unforgiving, a vast expanse where the line between reality and legend blurs beneath the weight of snow-covered pines and the eternal twilight of the long winter nights. My name is Mark Thompson, a seasoned wildlife photographer with a penchant for seeking out the unknown. While most people sought comfort indoors during the brutal winters, I found solace in the solitude of the wild, capturing moments that others deemed impossible. This particular winter, I decided to venture deeper into the heart of Denali National Park than I ever had before. The stories locals whispered about the hairy man had always piqued my curiosity. Descriptions varied, but the consensus was clear: a towering, hulking figure, covered in thick, matted fur, with eyes that glowed an unsettling amber in the darkness. Many dismissed it as mere folklore, a modern-day Bigfoot myth, but the disappearances kept the legend alive. Over 16,000 people had vanished within the Alaska Triangle over the past 50 years, and the hairy man was often cited as a possible culprit. I arrived at the trailhead just as the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. My gear was packed meticulously: camera, lenses, thermal blankets, and enough supplies to last me weeks. I had planned to document the elusive creature, to capture definitive proof of its existence. Little did I know, the true nature of my quest would lead me down a path of terror and desperation. The first few days were uneventful, a routine of hiking, setting up camp, and patiently waiting for any sign of wildlife. The snow was pristine, untouched, making tracking both easier and more deceptive. Footprints were my primary indicators, each one a clue in the silent narrative of the wilderness. But it was on the fourth night that everything changed. I had set up camp near a frozen river, the water's surface a mirror reflecting the vast expanse of stars above. The wind was a constant companion, whispering through the trees, carrying with it the faint scent of pine and something more metallic, almost like iron. As I sat by the fire, my camera ready, I heard it, a low, guttural growl, distant yet unmistakable. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. The growling grew louder, closer, reverberating through the snow and ice. Instinctively, I reached for my camera, trying to capture the source of the sound. But before I could act, a shadow moved at the edge of my vision, a massive figure standing just beyond the reach of the firelight. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice wavering between fear and authority. Silence. The only response was the relentless howl of the wind. I scanned the darkness, every muscle in my body tense, ready to flee or fight. Then, I saw it: footprints, large, deep, with clawed impressions that defied any known animal in the region. They led directly to my campsite, yet no one had approached from any direction. My mind raced, theories clashing against each other, but none provided a sense of safety. Sleep eluded me that night. Every creak of the tent, every snap of a twig outside, heightened my anxiety. The fire seemed to burn brighter, casting elongated shadows that danced menacingly around me. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, followed by something or someone unknowable. The next morning dawned gray and cold, the sky a blanket of overcast clouds that threatened snow. I decided to press deeper into the wilderness, hoping to find more concrete evidence. My guidebook had mentioned an area known for increased sightings, a secluded part of the park where the legends thrived. As I trekked through the thickening snow, the landscape grew more desolate, the trees denser, their branches heavy with ice. Hours passed without incident, and I began to question the validity of the stories. Maybe the hairy man was nothing more than an elaborate myth, a product of isolation and imagination. But then, as dusk approached, the environment shifted. The air grew colder, biting into my skin, making each breath visible. The forest seemed to close in around me, the silence oppressive. My footsteps were muffled by the fresh snow, and the darkness felt alive, pulsating with an unseen energy. It was then that I saw the clearing, a vast open space surrounded by towering pines, illuminated by the eerie glow of the moonlight reflecting off the snow. In the center stood a solitary figure, unmistakably humanoid but grotesquely oversized. The hairy man. He was at least 2.5 meters tall, his body covered in thick, tangled fur that seemed to absorb the light around him. His eyes, glowing a feral amber, met mine with a predatory gaze that sent chills down my spine. I raised my camera, hands trembling, attempting to steady my aim. "I just want to understand," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. He didn't respond with words. Instead, he tilted his head, the movement slow and deliberate, as if assessing whether I posed a threat. The growling I had heard earlier emanated from his throat, resonating deep within the clearing. I could feel the raw power in his presence, an ancient force tied to the very fabric of the wilderness. Suddenly, the ground beneath me seemed to shift, and I stumbled, my legs refusing to cooperate. Panic surged through me as the realization hit. I was trapped, the hairy man closing the distance between us with each passing second. My heart raced, my mind screaming for me to run, but my body refused to obey. Time became a blur. The moments stretched infinitely as the hairy man advanced, his movements unnervingly silent despite his massive size. The growling intensified, now accompanied by the sound of crunching snow under his heavy feet. My camera slipped from my grasp, clattering to the ground, capturing nothing but the fear in my eyes. "Please," I begged, desperation clawing at my voice. "I mean no harm." He stopped, mere meters away, his breath visible in the cold air. The expression on his face, or what I could interpret of it, was unreadable. A mix of sorrow and rage etched into his fur-covered visage. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, the atmosphere changed. The oppressive silence was replaced by a cacophony of whispers, voices from the past echoing through the trees. I realized with horror that the hairy man wasn't just a beast. He was a guardian, a sentinel for lost souls trapped within the Alaska Triangle. The disappearances were not random but orchestrated by this creature, ensuring that the balance remained undisturbed. Each missing person added to the legend, feeding the entity's need to maintain its dominion over the wilderness. The whispers grew louder, forming coherent sentences that pierced my mind. "Stay. Remember. Never leave." The words were fragments of lost lives, memories intertwined with the land itself. I felt their pain, their longing for release, binding me to the moment, summoning every ounce of strength. I broke free from the invisible restraints, my body moving on instinct rather than thought. I turned and ran, the hairy man's growls chasing me through the dense forest. Branches whipped against my face, the snow stinging my eyes, but I pushed forward, fueled by sheer survival instinct. The path back to civilization felt endless, each step heavier than the last. The whispers continued to haunt me, a chorus of the damned urging me to never forget, to never leave. I tripped over a root, falling hard onto the icy ground, the world spinning around me. As I struggled to get back on my feet, I heard a final, resonant growl, the sound of something ancient and unforgiving. When I finally broke free and reached the edge of the forest, the sun was just beginning to rise, casting a pale light over the snow-covered landscape. Exhausted and broken, I collapsed onto the ground, the reality of what I had experienced sinking in. The hairy man was not a myth. He was a part of the land, a living embodiment of the lost souls and untold stories that lingered within the Alaska Triangle. In the weeks that followed, I struggled to come to terms with what had happened. My photos from the trip were blank. No signs of the hairy man, no footprints captured in the snow. It was as if the wilderness had erased every trace of the encounter, leaving me with nothing but the indelible memory etched into my mind. The disappearances continued, each one adding to the legend of the hairy man. Authorities dismissed them as accidents or animal attacks, but those who knew the stories understood the truth. The Alaska Triangle was a place where the natural and supernatural intertwined, a realm where the lost souls found no peace and the hairy man remained their eternal guardian. I couldn't stay in Anchorage, not after what I had witnessed. The whispers followed me, a constant reminder of the thin veil between reality and the unknown. I left Alaska, hoping to escape the memories, but they clung to me like shadows, always present, always watching. Years later, I still hear the distant growls in my dreams, the whispers urging me to remember and never forget. The hairy man remains a haunting presence in my life, a testament to the mysteries that lie within the wilds and the stories that demand to be told. Some legends are born from fear, but they endure because they speak to something primal within us. The hairy man is more than a creature of folklore. He is a symbol of the wilderness's untamed spirit and the souls it holds. And as long as the Alaska Triangle remains shrouded in snow and mystery, the whispers will continue, echoing through the ages, a chilling reminder of the shadows that lurk just beyond the light. Story number 5. Shadows at the historic Anchorage Hotel. December 1998. The cold Alaskan wind whipped through the streets of Anchorage, carrying with it the scent of pine and the promise of a harsh winter. I had always been fascinated by old buildings, their weathered facades and hidden histories whispering secrets of the past. So when I stumbled upon the historic Anchorage Hotel, nestled between modern high-rises and glistening snow-covered trees, I knew I had to spend the night there. The hotel was a relic from another era, its brick exterior adorned with intricate carvings and wrought iron balconies. Once a bustling hub for travelers and locals alike, it now stood mostly empty, its grandeur faded but still evident in the grand lobby and ornate staircases. I checked in under a pseudonym, eager to explore the hotel's mysteries without drawing attention. The receptionist, a tired-looking woman with kind eyes, handed me the key with a knowing smile. "My first time staying here?" she asked softly. I nodded, sensing an unspoken understanding. "Yes, it's quite beautiful." She returned my smile with a faint nod. "Enjoy your stay. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask." I made my way to my room, carrying only a small backpack and my camera. The corridor was dimly lit, the walls adorned with vintage photographs and antique furnishings. As I approached my room, I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter air outside. Pushing the door open, I was greeted by the sight of a spacious room, complete with a large four-poster bed, heavy drapes, and a fireplace that hadn't been lit in years. I unpacked my things, placing my camera on the nightstand and settling into the armchair by the window. The view was stunning. Snow blanketed the landscape, and the city lights twinkled like distant stars. I decided to take a walk through the hotel, eager to capture its essence through my lens. The lobby was eerily quiet, the only sound the soft creak of the floorboards under my feet. I wandered through the grand hall, admiring the chandeliers and the ornate marble staircase. Every now and then, I caught glimpses of old paintings that seemed to watch me with somber eyes. As I turned a corner, I noticed a series of doors leading to different wings of the hotel. My curiosity got the better of me, and I chose the one labeled East Wing. The hallway was narrower, the air growing colder as I ventured deeper. The walls were adorned with portraits of women dressed in elegant gowns, their expressions hauntingly melancholic. I felt a presence, as if the eyes in the paintings were following my every move. Shaking off the unease, I continued down the corridor until I reached the end. There, in the farthest corner of the hallway, stood a woman in a flowing black dress. Her presence was both captivating and terrifying. She stood perfectly still, her pale skin contrasting sharply against the dark fabric of her gown. Her eyes were hollow, empty voids that seemed to pierce through me. I froze, unable to look away, as she slowly raised a hand and pointed toward a nearby room. "Hello," I called out, my voice wavering. She didn't respond, but I felt an overwhelming urge to follow her gesture. Summoning my courage, I approached the room she indicated. The door was slightly ajar, revealing a dimly lit space that looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. Dust motes danced in the beam of my flashlight as I pushed the door open. Stepping inside, the room was furnished with antique chairs and a small writing desk. A faded portrait hung above the fireplace, depicting a young woman with the same hollow eyes and sorrowful expression as the woman in the hallway. My heart raced as I realized the connection. This woman was part of the hotel's tragic history. I took a step closer, my eyes scanning the room for any clues. That's when I heard it, a soft whisper, barely audible, coming from the fireplace. I turned to look, but saw nothing out of the ordinary. The temperature in the room seemed to drop, my breath visible in the cold air. "Mary," the whisper called out, the name carrying a weight of sorrow and pain. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I pieced together the fragments of the story. Mary, a young woman who had stayed at the hotel decades ago, had discovered her husband's infidelity on Christmas Eve. Consumed by grief and betrayal, she had taken her own life, leaving behind a legacy of tragedy that had never been fully addressed. Determined to uncover the truth, I began researching the hotel's history. I delved into old newspapers, archives, and spoke with the few remaining staff members who had worked there over the years. The story of Mary unfolded before me, a tale of love, betrayal, and untimely death. But the most chilling part was the legend that her spirit still lingered, bound to the place of her final moments. One night, as I sat in the lobby reviewing my photos, I heard the soft sound of footsteps echoing through the halls. My heart pounded as I recognized the same gait, slow, deliberate, as if someone were dragging their feet in grief. I grabbed my camera, deciding to capture whatever presence haunted the hotel. I followed the sound, my footsteps echoing in the empty corridors. The footsteps led me back to the East Wing, where I had first encountered Mary. As I entered the hallway, the temperature plummeted, and the air grew thick with an oppressive energy. There she was again, Mary, standing at the end of the corridor, her eyes empty and sorrowful. "Why are you here?" I demanded, my voice breaking. She didn't respond, but I felt her pain, a deep-seated sorrow that resonated within me. Suddenly, the walls around me began to shift, the portrait's eyes following my every move. I felt as though the entire hotel was closing in, trapping me within its haunted embrace. The room I had entered earlier came into view, the fireplace now alive with flickering flames. The faded portrait above it seemed to come to life, Mary's eyes glistening with tears. I approached cautiously, my camera raised, capturing the ethereal glow of her presence. "Mary," I whispered, "what do you want?" A cold breeze swept through the room, extinguishing the flames and plunging me into darkness. The whispers returned, louder and more insistent. "Remember us. Don't forget." I felt a presence behind me, the unmistakable chill of death pressing against my skin. I turned to face her, the sorrow in her eyes overwhelming me. "I won't forget," I vowed, tears welling up in my eyes. "I promise." In that moment, the oppressive energy lifted, and the room seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. Mary's form began to fade, her sorrow transforming into peace. As dawn broke, I left the hotel with a heavy heart, the weight of Mary's story etched into my soul. I knew I had to honor her memory, to ensure that her pain was acknowledged and remembered. Over the years, I returned to the historic Anchorage Hotel, each visit deepening my connection to its haunted past. I documented my experiences, sharing the stories of those who had been lost to the shadows. The hotel remains a place of mystery, its haunted halls a testament to the lingering spirits that seek closure and remembrance. Every Christmas Eve, the whispers grow louder, the shadows deeper, as if the spirits are still waiting for someone to listen, to remember their stories. And so, I continue to visit, to document, and to remember, for in the heart of the Alaska wilderness, the historic Anchorage Hotel stands as a beacon for lost souls, their stories forever entwined with the shadows that dance beneath its grand facade. In the end, I learned that some spirits are bound by their unresolved pain, their presence a reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring power of memory. The historic Anchorage Hotel is more than just a building. It's a vessel for the stories of those who came before, their whispers echoing through the halls, ensuring that they are never truly forgotten. As the snow continues to fall each winter, covering the landscape in a blanket of white, I am reminded of the voices that call out from the shadows, urging us to remember, to honor, and to keep their stories alive. The historic Anchorage Hotel stands as a silent sentinel, guarding the memories of those who lost their lives within its walls, their spirits forever entwined with the history and mystery that define this haunted place. Story number 6. Whispers of the Alaska Triangle. December 2018. I still remember the day I decided to venture into the heart of the Alaska Triangle. As a seasoned wilderness guide, I had led countless expeditions through the rugged terrains of Alaska. But something about this region called to me differently, a silent, unsettling whisper that echoed in the back of my mind. The locals spoke of it in hushed tones. Tales of disappearances and eerie encounters that sent shivers down the spine of even the hardiest souls. My name is Ethan Carter, and I've always been drawn to the unknown, the places where the veil between reality and myth thins. When I first heard about the Alaska Triangle, stretching from Juneau to Anchorage and up to Barrow, I was intrigued. Over the past 50 years, more than 16,000 people had vanished within its bounds. Pilots, hunters, tourists, each disappearance more baffling than the last. Theories ranged from magnetic anomalies to extraterrestrial activity. But the locals had a different explanation. The Kushtaka. In Tlingit folklore, Kushtaka are shape-shifting creatures resembling otters or mermaids, known for luring unsuspecting victims into treacherous waters. Skeptical yet fascinated, I decided to explore the triangle, hoping to uncover the truth behind these legends. The trip began in Anchorage, where I met with Sarah, a local historian who had dedicated her life to studying the triangle's mysteries. Her knowledge was invaluable, and her stories painted a vivid picture of the region's dark history. They're not just stories, Ethan, Sarah warned as we sat in a cozy cafe, the warmth contrasting sharply with the icy landscape outside. The Kushtaka are very real to the people here. They're said to be spirits of those who didn't find peace, transformed into these creatures to roam the wilderness, seeking company or revenge. I nodded, absorbing every word. Sarah had experienced first-hand encounters that defied logical explanation, and her conviction was both compelling and unnerving. Our journey took us deep into the wilderness, the vast expanse of snow-covered forests and frozen lakes stretching endlessly before us. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and the distant howl of the wind. As we ventured further, the landscape became more desolate, the silence almost deafening, broken only by the crunch of our boots on the snow. One evening, as dusk settled over the land, we set up camp near a frozen river. The sky was a tapestry of stars, the Milky Way a bright ribbon overhead. We sat by the fire, sharing stories and theories, the flickering flames casting long shadows around us. "Have you ever seen one?" I asked Sarah, referring to the Kushtaka. She hesitated, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "Once, years ago, I was out hunting alone, near the river. It was quiet, too quiet. Suddenly, I saw something move in the water, something that shouldn't be there. It looked like an otter at first, but its eyes, they were human, filled with sorrow and malice. It watched me for what felt like hours before disappearing into the depths. A chill ran down my spine. The idea of encountering such a creature was both terrifying and exhilarating. We decided to push deeper into the triangle, our determination unwavering despite the growing sense of unease. Days turned into nights, and the wilderness seemed to grow more oppressive with each passing hour. The weather was unpredictable, shifting from calm and clear to violent snowstorms without warning. Our supplies dwindled, and fatigue set in. But the mystery of the triangle kept us moving forward. One night, under a sky illuminated by the northern lights, we heard it, a soft, melodic chanting carried by the wind. It was unlike anything I had ever heard, a haunting melody that seemed to call out to us from the shadows. We followed the sound, our breaths visible in the cold air, hearts pounding with a mix of fear and anticipation. The chanting led us to a clearing, where the snow lay undisturbed, save for a series of large footprints leading into the dense forest. The prints were unlike any animal I knew, massive, with an odd, humanoid shape and elongated digits. My mind raced, trying to identify the creature responsible. "Could it be a Kushtaka?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. Before I could respond, a figure emerged from the darkness. At first glance, it looked like a man, tall and lean, his presence almost ethereal. But as it stepped closer, the true nature of the creature became apparent. The skin was pale and slick, reflecting the shimmering lights above. Its eyes were large and luminous, holding an intelligence that was both captivating and terrifying. We froze, unable to move or speak. The creature tilted its head, studying us with an intensity that made my blood run cold. "Why are you here?" Sarah finally managed to ask, her voice trembling. The Kushtaka didn't respond with words. Instead, it raised its hands, and the air around us seemed to shimmer and distort. Visions flooded my mind, images of lost souls wandering the wilderness, trapped between life and death. I saw faces of those who had vanished within the triangle, their expressions filled with longing and despair. The creature extended a hand towards us, and I felt an overwhelming urge to follow, to join the spirits in their eternal wandering. My legs felt like lead, and I struggled to break free from the invisible hold. Sarah, sensing my distress, grabbed my arm, pulling me back. "No, Ethan, we have to leave," she cried, her fear palpable. But the Kushtaka was relentless. It moved closer, its form shifting and changing, becoming more fluid and indistinct. The chanting intensified, now a cacophony of voices pleading for help. I could feel the weight of their suffering pressing down on me, threatening to consume my very being. Summoning every ounce of strength, I broke free from the creature's grasp, stumbling back into the clearing. The Kushtaka recoiled, a silent snarl replacing the serene expression it had held moments before. With a final, haunting glance, it vanished into the forest, the chanting fading into the night. We didn't waste a second, packing up our camp under the cover of darkness. We made our way back the way we came, the memory of the encounter etched into our minds. The journey back was fraught with a sense of impending doom, the wilderness now feeling like a labyrinth designed to trap us forever. Upon reaching anchorage, exhaustion and relief washed over us. We shared our story with the authorities, who were skeptical but promised to investigate further. The local community was already abuzz with tales of the Kushtaka, their fear and fascination growing with each new disappearance. Months passed, and the Alaska Triangle remained a place of mystery and fear. My experience became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the thin line between reality and legend. I couldn't shake the feeling that the Kushtaka were watching, waiting for the next curious soul to wander into their domain. One winter night, years after our expedition, I received a letter in the mail. It was plain, no return address, but the handwriting was unmistakably Sarah's. "Ethan, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't escape the triangle. The Kushtaka took me, just like they did so many others. Please, heed our warnings and stay away. They don't want to be forgotten. They are very real." Tears blurred my vision as I read her words. It was a stark reminder of the lives lost and the dark forces that still lurked within the Alaska Triangle. I realized that some mysteries are best left unsolved, their secrets guarded by the very legends that warned us against them. Now, whenever the northern lights dance across the sky, I think of Sarah and the other lost souls, their stories intertwined with the haunting presence of the Kushtaka. The Alaska Triangle remains a place of fear and fascination, a testament to the power of myth and the unknown. And as I sit by my fireplace, the shadows flickering on the walls, I can almost hear the distant chanting carried by the wind, a chilling reminder that some legends never die, and some spirits never find peace. Story number 7. Whispers of Anjikuni. December 1930. The bitter Alaskan wind howled through the vast, desolate wilderness, carrying with it the promise of a harsh winter. I was Joe LaBelle, a seasoned hunter accustomed to the unforgiving embrace of the northern wilds. But nothing could have prepared me for what awaited me in the remote Inuit village of Anjikuni. I had been tracking a particularly elusive moose for days, the beast seemingly aware of my every move. The snow was deep, and the nights were long, but I pressed on, driven by a mix of determination and desperation. Supplies were running low, and the isolation weighed heavily on my spirit. It was during one of these relentless pursuits that I stumbled upon Anjikuni, a name that would haunt me for the rest of my days. From a distance, the village appeared serene, nestled between towering pine trees and a frozen river that glistened under the pale winter moon. Smoke curled lazily from the chimneys, and the faint sounds of daily life reached my ears. Relief washed over me at the sight of signs of habitation. Perhaps I could restock my supplies and find warmth among friendly faces. As I approached, the eerie silence became palpable. There were no sounds of laughter, no chatter, no animal calls, only the relentless whisper of the wind through the trees. My boots crunched on the fresh snow as I entered the village square, my eyes scanning the abandoned dwellings. Each hut was meticulously crafted, doors and windows intact, interiors seemingly untouched. The cabins stood as ghostly sentinels, guarding secrets I was not meant to uncover. I called out, my voice cracking the oppressive stillness. "Hello? Is anyone here?" My words echoed back at me, bouncing off the empty structures with no response. Unease settled in my gut. I continued my exploration, moving from one hut to another, searching for any sign of life. But the village was deserted, no footprints, no signs of struggle, nothing to suggest a sudden departure. As dusk began to fall, I found myself in the heart of Anjikuni. In the center of the village stood a large communal lodge, its doors wide open. Inside, the furnishings were arranged as if waiting for the inhabitants to return. A fire pit lay cold, the ashes untouched. It was as if everyone had simply vanished into thin air, leaving behind a perfectly preserved snapshot of a moment frozen in time. My mind raced with questions. Where had they gone? What could have caused such a mysterious disappearance? I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the freezing temperatures. Determined to find answers, I ventured deeper into the lodge, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The walls were adorned with intricate carvings, depicting scenes of daily life, hunting, and celebrations. But amidst the artwork, there were symbols I couldn't decipher, strange markings that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. My heart pounded as I reached the back of the lodge, where a large stone altar stood. It was covered in fresh snow, yet no signs of recent use were visible. Suddenly, a faint whispering filled the air, barely audible over the sound of the wind. I froze, straining to listen. The whispers grew louder, forming coherent words that sent shivers down my spine. "Do not forget us." I spun around, my flashlight darting across the room, but saw nothing. The whispers continued, now louder and more urgent. "Stay with us." Panic surged through me. I backed away from the altar, my mind reeling. What was happening here? Was this some form of ritual gone wrong? Or something far more sinister? As I turned to leave, a sudden gust of wind slammed the lodge doors shut, plunging me into darkness. My flashlight flickered, casting dancing shadows on the walls. The temperature dropped sharply, my breath visible in the frigid air. The whispers transformed into mournful wails, echoing through the space like the cries of lost souls. I stumbled forward, desperate to escape, but the lodge seemed to warp around me. Hallways stretched and twisted, doors led to nowhere, and the once welcoming interiors became oppressive and menacing. The symbols on the walls began to glow with an eerie light, illuminating grotesque figures that seemed to move just beyond the edge of my vision. In the distance, I saw a faint light, a flicker of hope amidst the darkness. I raced towards it, the wails growing louder, more frantic. As I drew closer, the light coalesced into a single figure standing in the center of a room. It was a woman, her face pale and hollow, eyes empty voids staring directly at me. "Why did you leave us?" she whispered, her voice like the rustling of dead leaves. I tried to speak, but no words came out. My throat was parched, my mind numb with fear. The woman's gaze bore into me, and I felt an overwhelming sense of sorrow and loss emanating from her. "You must remember," she continued, her voice growing more desperate. "Remember our story. Suddenly, the room around me shifted, and I was plunged into darkness. I felt myself falling, the world spinning wildly as visions flashed before my eyes, images of the villagers, their faces twisted in terror, a blinding light engulfing the village, and the earth swallowing them whole. The whispers became screams, drowning out any remaining sense of reality. When I finally landed, I was back in my own home, the fire crackling softly in the hearth. My heart raced as I looked around, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The clock on the mantelpiece ticked steadily, the only sound in the room. Had it all been a nightmare? But the memory felt so vivid, so real. I rose from the couch, needing to verify my sanity. My mind replayed the events of that night in Anjikuni, the deserted village, the mysterious symbols, the spectral woman. I reached for my phone, intending to research the disappearance, but it wouldn't turn on. Panic set in as I realized something was terribly wrong. The room grew colder, the temperature dropping to an unbearable chill. I glanced towards the window and saw the snow outside moving unnaturally, swirling in patterns that defied the stillness of the night. The whispers returned, this time emanating from the shadows themselves. "Do not forget us." I backed away, my eyes wide with fear. The symbols from Anjikuni began to appear on the walls of my home, glowing with the same eerie light. The air was thick with the presence of unseen entities, their sorrowful cries filling the room. Desperate to escape, I tried to leave the house, but the doors were locked, the windows sealed shut as if by an invisible force. The fireplace roared to life, flames dancing unnaturally high, casting grotesque shadows that twisted and contorted. The woman from Anjikuni appeared once more, her figure wavering like a reflection on disturbed water. "Remember our story. Help us." Tears streamed down my face as I understood. The spirits of Anjikuni were reaching out, trapped between worlds, unable to find peace. Their disappearance was not a mere mystery, but a tragic event that left their souls bound to the place they once called home. Summoning every ounce of courage, I spoke through my tears. "What can I do to help?" The air shifted, the oppressive energy lightening slightly. The symbols on the walls began to fade, replaced by images of the villagers in happier times, laughing, celebrating, living their lives. The woman smiled sadly, her form becoming more translucent. "Remember us. Share our story." With that, the spirits began to fade, their presence dissolving into the air like mist. The temperature rose back to normal, the shadows receding as peace settled over the room. The symbols were gone, and the whispers ceased, leaving only the steady tick of the clock. Exhausted, I sank to the floor, my body trembling. The memory of Anjikuni lingered, a haunting reminder of the night I had touched the veil between the living and the dead. I knew what I had to do. Over the following months, I dedicated myself to uncovering the truth behind Anjikuni's disappearance. I pored over old records, interviewed distant relatives, and scoured archives for any mention of the village. The more I learned, the more I realized the depth of the tragedy. The villagers had been performing a ritual, a desperate plea for protection against an unknown threat. But something had gone horribly wrong, trapping their spirits and leaving their physical bodies vanished without a trace. I decided to return to the site of Anjikuni, hoping to lay their souls to rest. The journey was arduous, the Alaskan wilderness unforgiving, but the memory of that night, the spirit's plea for remembrance, drove me forward. When I arrived, the village was gone, replaced by an expanse of untouched snow and towering pines. There was no sign of the huts, no footprints leading anywhere. It was as if the village had been erased from existence. I stood in the snow, feeling the weight of history pressing down on me. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, I felt a presence beside me. The air grew cold, and I saw the flicker of candlelight in the distance. Gathering my courage, I followed the light to a clearing where the remnants of the village once stood. The ground was undisturbed, the snow pristine, but the air was thick with sorrow. I began to speak, recounting the story of Anjikuni, honoring their memory and acknowledging their suffering. I shared their tale with anyone who would listen, ensuring that their voices were not forgotten. As I spoke, I felt a sense of peace settle over the land, the spirits finally finding the closure they had long been denied. Years later, the story of Anjikuni remains a chilling reminder of the thin line between the living and the dead. I often think back to that December night, the whispers of lost souls echoing in my mind. The experience taught me that some mysteries are not meant to be solved but remembered. Their stories carried forward to honor those who can no longer speak for themselves. And every Christmas, as the snow begins to fall and the wind whispers through the trees, I remember the spirits of Anjikuni, their silent plea a testament to the enduring power of memory and the unbreakable bonds of community. Even in death,